Welcome to the Forgiven podcast, everybody. I am your host, Pastor Logan. Sorry for the lack of episodes. Ministry takes precedence, but we're going to be hopefully changing that going forward. Today, I have with me returning guest. Do you want to just give us a little bit about yourself, your name, who you are?
Yeah, sure. I'm Carter Dupuis, and first of all, I just want to say your first introduction was much more concise. He showed a lot more care for you guys.
Why would you
now
throw
it's
me
just
under
like,
the bus?
sorry about that. Let's get into it.
Why would you
but
throw me under the
I
bus
just
like that?
Thought I'd let them know. Yeah, I'm Carter Dupuis. I'm part of the Exalt Crew ministry event thing. So that's why I was returning guest. I was here on the last episode that was around Exalt. And yeah, I'm also in production. So I do production for Exalt, but I also do it outside of there. I'm the lighting designer for Trident Music, where we do the Wheat Kings games and all sorts of galas and events and whatever with lighting. And other than that, grade 12 student at Vincent Massey.
That's awesome. See, I also was a lighting designer. Not nearly as big for like Trident Music and stuff, but that is how I got my start in the actual professional world. Was I did lighting for a couple bars and things like that in college, like a couple little shows here and there, and I always did the parties for college. So I always did our after grad parties, and so I got my start in there. Now some of that is just pre-programmed, leave it on, whatever, it's beat to the music, but then some of it was programming all the different things. Anyway, I don't want to get too specific on the nerdy stuff today because we would lose 90% of the audience. You and I would love it.
Yeah.
But what the idea of today's episode is to kind of answer the question, why does production and tech matter to churches? Or maybe a bigger question, should it matter to the church? Even the idea of 100 years ago, the idea of adding a speaker to a musical instrument to a church was a big deal. For the longest time it was just singing and hymns, and then, oh no, somebody wants to play their guitar. What do we think about that? And the next thing you know, they're gonna play the piano, and then this and that, and now it's slowly evolved into at least the church in North America. We can only necessarily talk about that because that's what we've experienced. Has shifted, and so there's been a big shift in at least our Western churches of production. And I think, so just overall, why do we think that church production is important?
Yeah, and we haven't really talked about this, you and I, all that much, so I'd love to hear your outlook after this. But yeah, I think it's kind of the same story as you were saying, that we're moving forward as technology progresses, right? So churches started with just hymns, and then we went into guitars, and then we went into, like you said, keyboards and whatever, and probably not directly electric keyboards, but it all evolved, and then you needed speakers, and then once we started doing videos, we started thinking about lights, right? Because we're live streaming, so now you need lighting on things. So we're just kind of evolving as a church community as society evolves, and I think it's important to be staying with that. Something I think people get confused and why there's so much controversy is because we're not trying to create an atmosphere with all these lights and all these nice expensive speakers. We're trying to complement the atmosphere that has already been here, right? We're trying to use what we have now as a society and as technological people with gifts like this to accent the church experience and the experience that God is creating, right?
I love the way you put that. We are not necessarily creating the atmosphere, but we are enhancing the atmosphere. I think that is extremely well put. Because even just as a pastor, it's not necessarily my job to create the worship atmosphere, but it's my job to invite people into a worshipful space and atmosphere. And so then the other side of that is as a production and media person, how do we enhance that? So I think that is just extremely well put. And so I guess I kind of want to ask you a little bit, because we went over the base. So that's why we do production. But what got you into it? What was the moment that you were hey, this is something that I'm passionate about, that I wanna pursue?
Yeah, so I got my job at Trident Music by bugging my boss. I would go up to him. He came into the restaurant that I worked at the time a lot, and so I would go up to his table every time he was there, and I would bug him into eventually giving me a job for the Wheat Kings. And I just got thrown into it. I had no desire to work in lights. I had done a bunch of Launchpad covers, if any of you guys know what those are. They're like a little box of buttons that you push. Oh, it's so fun. Used to love those as a kid. I was lot younger then. And so whatever, he was showing me the console and everything, and I kind of saw some similarities. You're just pushing buttons and making light effects. So I went in and started working for the Wheat Kings when I was 15, and I was just this young kid going in there and had no desire to work in production before that. I just wanted to work for Ronnie, and that's my boss. And then just fell in love with it within the first season. And at that point, I was just the jockey. I wasn't designing anything. I was just putting sliders up and pressing buttons and watching hockey. But I loved it so much. And so once I figured out that we had moving heads, like lights and fog machines and whatever at Trident, I started asking about those and found out we just used an iPad software to control all that stuff. So I was like, okay, let me learn how the software works for the Wheat Kings, and I'll start bringing that computer and stuff to events that we're doing, and then we can not be using this iPad software and use a proper setup. And so I kind of pitched that on Ronnie. He was like, sure, go for it. I looked it up, stayed up so late. Like I'd be up until 2 a.m. watching these videos every night, just watching how all this nerdy stuff that we're not going to get too deep into works.
Well, we can get into it a little bit.
Okay.
And now I have to ask, what software did you learn?
Onyx. Straight into Onyx.
That's the one that I got thrown exactly the same way. I wasn't nearly as professional as the Wheat Kings.
Yeah.
It was for a church, but I showed up one day to volunteer to learn like slides, and then somebody was like, "Hey, you're actually going to learn how to do this." And it was the exact same thing. Press this button, and here's a blue thing. Press this. Oh, you want to go red? Hit this. And then it was a slow burn of like, okay, you know what? Oh, wait, you know how to use the lights? I'm like, well, I know how to turn the presets on. It's like, well, can you figure out how to use a spotlight? I'm like, well, okay. Well, second monitor, YouTube, Onyx. So I can relate to that. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And no, that's exactly it. And if you have that passion inside of you, that's going to you're going to pour into that. And Onyx, for those of you, all of you that don't know, Onyx is so in depth. You can go as far as you want or as shallow as you want. Like you can make it simple or you can make it so complex compared to what a lot of churches use now,
Yes.
which is Light Key, where it's like not as complex. It's super simple and does some cool things. But Onyx is one where it's like, yeah, you got to really be passionate.
We'll talk, let's just get the tech stuff out of the way right now, because some people might find this interesting. So at my first church here in Brandon, I used Light Key, did not like it. It was too simple, right? Because I came from that Onyx world of like being able to program beats per minute and chases and all these fades and everything like that. Not that we had the most super expensive fixtures that could fully utilize all that programming, but I got so used to doing it that way that Light Key was like actually a huge struggle for me.
Yeah.
Because I was like so used to going in and setting fixture profiles and like doing like all these things that I couldn't do. And so I was like, I genuinely actually really struggled with it. And then I had to watch a ton of YouTube videos on it, and we got it to, I think they use it now and they love it. And I think it's great for a volunteer. And here now we use Show Express, which I like have only just started breaking the ice on and like figuring out like the timings and everything to it. But yeah, that's really interesting that like you take that perspective of like understanding that like churches don't always have the manpower to hire somebody to do all that kind of stuff, which is like, I would love to talk about that too, of like looking at production for churches specifically. But have you used any other software besides like Onyx in like an actual like professional setting, or has that always been like what you've used?
Yeah, no, just Onyx. So I wasn't dissing Light Key. I've never really used it.
Yeah, I know you weren't dissing it.
Yeah,
but
just Onyx. That's
the one thing that I don't like about Light Key is it's Mac exclusive.
Oh, but Onyx is Windows exclusive.
I know.
So, they both kind of suck in that way.
Windows is better.
Windows.
By a margin.
It's true.
So I guess now, in terms of like understanding why lighting is important, let's talk a little bit about that now, because I think some people watching this might not fully grasp the idea of like why we use. Obviously, we need to see people's faces and stuff like that, but it goes like much deeper than that. Like what is the heart behind those kinds of things? Let's try to like keep it like Exalt focused, right? Because it's more ministry applicable and everything. Like, because like obviously it's different with the Wheat Kings. You're putting on a show, right? Like people are paying to go and see the pyro and the sounds go off when they score and everything like that. But that's not the purpose with a church service, or at least maybe it shouldn't be. Not knocking if that's what you're doing, but like think about Exalt. Like let's tear into that a little bit and talk about that.
Yeah, so I think the best representation of putting production into Exalt was June. We just poured into production there. We rented all of Trident's lights and all of Look's lights and took a bunch of lights from MDAC. Like, we got every light we could find in Brandon. And
You didn't come to us. I had a couple I could have given you.
you know what? I talked to Joel about it, and he was like, I don't think it'll happen. Not even worth asking. But
What does Joel know?
I don't know. Apparently nothing. But I would have loved more movers. But anyways, yeah, Exalt was a really good, I think, vision in my mind that kind of came together to, again, accent, not create. Because for the first half of Exalt, you didn't see the lights. It was way too bright. And that's okay, right? We poured, whatever, 25 hours into setting and not setting up, but yeah, probably like 12 hours into setting up lights and another 12 into programming them. But you didn't see it for the first half. And that's totally okay because the worship was still there and people were still there getting an experience from God. But as it got later and we got into the more exciting parts, but also the more worshipful parts, you could just see how this atmosphere was created around what God was doing. And there was times where I would just turn the lights completely off and we could just accent the worship in that way and just let it be completely led by God. But there was also times like during Praise and I Thank God at the end where, we could go big and exciting.
Yep.
And it drew people in. I talked to a couple people who I didn't expect to see at Exalt. And I said, what brought you in? And they said, oh, well, we could hear the music and it sounded awesome and we could see the lights and we wanted to come check it out. And it's like, really, if that's all that we got out of the lights, and that was it, was that two people came because they were interested in what was going on and they saw like, oh, churches are doing this? Like they're not all just in Catholic churches with organs, which is also awesome. But I don't know, it caught a lot of people's attention.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a positive.
And I will say, having been at that Exalt, like I didn't stay for like the very, very end because this Sunday I was tired. But I like did catch some of the movers and stuff like that. Come on, the cross you designed out of the square fixtures, the light bars. That was awesome. That was really cool. And one thing that you guys did, I'll just glaze you for a second. The video quality that you guys did was like pretty good, but you used like spotlights and like positional lights like really well to like keep people lit, which is very hard to do outside, by the way, because you have all the ambient light and everything like that disperses way faster like when it's outside. So like, it doesn't have walls to refract off of and all these things. So like spotlighting and stuff like that outside is way harder to do, especially at the distance you guys had to do. So props to you guys for that. But one thing too that I've always found with production in churches, I think a lot of like regular congregants or people attending misunderstand why we do it. Because I'll be honest, yes, it is really fun. Don't get me wrong. I love coming into the sanctuary sometimes on Friday before our reverence worship nights, and I'll crank something and I'll just start strobing and having fun, because for me, it's a creative outlet and it keeps my juices flowing as to like for other creative processes that I have to do. So I can be honest. And sometimes, yes, you have to be very careful that you walk that fine line of like understanding that this is to enhance worship and it is to enhance the heart of what's going on. Versus like the other line of that is like putting on a show and becoming distracting. And I think so many people misconstrued what people's intentions are behind that. And so I think like if you're listening to this and you maybe seem to think your church is too flashy or anything like that, talk to whoever's in charge and hear their heart behind it and see like why they're doing what they're doing, because you might just be misunderstanding the purpose behind that. Because I know for me, like I've had some very good experiences as a production tech where people are like, thank you, that was so great. But I've also had a lot of bad experiences in churches and not in churches of like, that was terrible, that's distracting, I can't hear, I can't see, all this kind of stuff. But once I'm able to explain why we do the things that we're doing, most of the time people understand. So I just want to give that to the audience too, of like, if you're listening to this and maybe you're listening from Bethel and you have questions about it, come talk to me. Maybe if you are at a different church, whatever, talk to whoever's in charge, because I bet you they're not just doing it to look cool. They're doing it for a purpose. And also churches live stream now. Like the pandemic forced people to do that. And with the plethora of content available online now on a Sunday morning. It's not couch surfing anymore. You're doom scrolling churches on your YouTube, figuring out which one you want to watch. And 9 times out of 10, the one that pops to you is going to have the good lighting, the good sound, is the one you're going to want to watch. So churches now are in a constant battle almost with other churches, which is backwards, to make sure that they get the eyes and things like that they deserve. So there's a bit of a contrast there as well. Like if you want a good live stream, you need lights, like you said. And if you want a good live stream, you need good audio. And that comes with equipment and time and energy. So, you know, that's one reason why it's so important for churches, is because it is the nature of the world we live in now, which is tough.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like what you said with it's almost a battle of churches. It reminds me of being in Quebec City. I was there for a trip with my school, and we got to see so many Catholic churches. The downtown has so many Catholic churches.
Yeah, I was there in Montreal.
Were you? It's gorgeous. They're gorgeous. And our tour guide was telling us all about how the churches would battle to be the tallest in the city ever.
Yep.
Right? And they would add like a 1-inch taller cross than the other church had. And they would go up there and they would replace their cross to be slightly taller so that they were the tallest church in Quebec. And that's almost what this feels like, which again, like you said, it's backwards. We're not supposed to be competing to have the most lights. We're accenting, not competing, not creating. But like you said, that's kind of what churches seem to end up doing.
Yeah.
And that's when things, I know this is on here, about going overboard happens. Yeah. And so one of the questions on here, I should have let you ask but it's, has there ever been a time where you experienced just an overboard experience, like an overboard production?
Literally going to ask this question next. So.
Perfect. Well, here we are. And yeah, definitely have. And so I went to a concert. I won't say the name because I don't want it to be whatever. I don't want to dox a worship band that I love, but I went to a concert and it was titled as a concert. It wasn't titled as a worship night. Okay. It was titled as a concert. And so I went there and I was like expecting a worship night. I was expecting a massive stadium. It was 12,000 people. I was expecting 12,000 people to be there for worship, and that's it. Worship's in the name of the band. I was like, this is going to happen. And I got there and saw the lights, and I was ecstatic. I went and I found the lighting guy, and I was like, yo, can I talk to you? I had to get through security and everything.
Wow.
Got his Instagram, and I was like, let's chat. How'd you get here? How'd you do this kind of stuff? And then I was so excited, and I was like, I want to do this. I want to work for these guys. And then I went, sat front row or whatever. I got as close as I could, or far enough back to see the lights. And then like they started playing, and it was probably halfway through the night. I had kind of been staring at the lights the whole time. I was like, started to notice that and piece that together. I was like, man, what am I doing? Why? I came here with the idea of worship, and I knew it was going to be cool. I've seen their videos. I knew it was going to be cool lights. But I was like, man, these lights are awesome. I can't take my eyes off them. And that's something for me. I love lights so much. Everybody who knows me knows that. And so I was like, maybe that's not for everybody else, but I was just looking at it and it was just like strobing or gobos all around, colors everywhere. Even during the slow songs, it was like pretty big production. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. And I had to kind of leave and talk myself down about like still being happy that I went. And it was almost felt like a negative experience that I went. And I was like, that felt almost disrespectful to God from them, from me. Like that just felt like it was way too much. So anyways, obviously that was labeled as a concert. That wasn't labeled as a worship night. But it put me in check because that was right before an Exalt event. I was like, I'm not doing that at Exalt. Like the June one, I don't think I did that. If I did, I need to chill out.
I don't think you did.
I hope not. Like Praise, we got pretty big for lights, but I think that's okay. That's a big, exciting song, but it really kept me in check on how I want to, treat what God's doing.
And just to say, like, I know for me, I still like when I was in Bible college, I struggled with this a lot. Where like as a young pastor, you study other pastors, right? You want to become better. But as like you're learning all this theology, and I can say I became very cynical and I became very critical. And so I could not watch a church service without tearing it apart. Whether it was how long their announcements, and then you throw on me being such a tech production guy. holy man, it was impossible for me for like 3 years in Bible college to like just enjoy church. Now, mind you, I was working as a church, so it's different to look at my own work with a critical eye than like trying to go to a different church when I'm home or watching a friend preach at a different church or whatever. Even then, I was so nitpicky and so like engulfed in all of the production and this preaching and this and that. I became so cynical and so critical. And it like really, I had to really check my heart in that, being like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this to glorify God? Am I doing this out of jealousy? Am I doing this out of envy? And all these things. And a lot of it was jealousy and envy. I can be totally honest and say that. It was a while ago. But then I came to realize that like it's okay to be a little critical as long as I don't stay in that like space. And so I can just say that to say like I completely understand like where you're coming from in that way. Like, you know, just this couple weeks ago, I finally went on vacation and I went back to my old church, the place that gave me my start and everything like that. And I was expecting to go to church and just sit and all that. And I like did it and like found myself like not caring about anything but like the service. And I was like, wow, I've matured a lot. Like I had to think about that for a second. I was like, normally I would have like, and of course I did note some things because I know them and I know that like they would want me to say something that if I actually saw something wrong, but I was able to like actually just like sit and enjoy it. And I was like, wow, I was like, this is awesome. Like I was like, it was really good. So I said to tell you too, like, it's okay to be passionate about something and to like have a passion for lights and to go and enjoy them and see and be critical. Because it is how you learn. That is how you get better. And I'm just going to encourage you to like, you won't stay in there forever. Like I think eventually your mind and your age and everything like that will show you that like, you know what, no, it's okay. You can just to go and enjoy an experience without picking it apart. It just took me a couple of years
totally
in that way. But like, and just to say like, and I can be honest and say this too, like, Exalt has been like fantastic. I've been to all of them except like one. I missed the very first one. And I'll just be honest and say, like, I love that you allowed that I was able to do the lights the last time. Was not nearly as good as I could have been. And I know there's a couple of moments where we're not going to get into it too much, but there's a couple of moments where I definitely missed a cue and was like, yep, that was definitely programmed wrong. Or I was like, you know what? I was like, that's too distracting and different moments like that. And I even had some of my students come up to me and be like, Logan, like, you blinded us. And I was like, she's awesome. She was very honest with me. And she was like, it was great. But she's like, one moment it was like, she was like, you just like blinded us while he was like praying or something like that. And I was like, yep, I absolutely did. And so it's like, I think anybody that listens to this knows that critical feedback is like really important, whether you're in church production or anything. Yeah. So I say all that to say too, like, it's good to be critical of yourself too. Anyway.
Yeah, totally.
Now, I guess I have to ask, what is one of the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome in like this like production ministry so far? Or maybe you could, and I think you could, this two-part question, what is a time you can remember where you just bombed? Because I'm sure that's happened. Like there's got to be one of those moments where it's like, you know, I can remember a time when I was doing lights for an event, for a concert at my old church, and I like programmed everything. It was good, and I mistimed the time. Like I set up the time code wrong from the very beginning. Man. And I was busking trying to like fix it and I just couldn't, and I had to chalk it, and
you had to busk the whole show.
I just had to busk the whole show. And for those who maybe don't know what that term means, is a lot of time we program to the beats per minute of the song, and then you're just you're just keeping time. I set that all wrong from the very beginning. And so every song was like, it wasn't like one or two beats off. It was a lot off because it just gets gradually worse. Right. And so I had to like then freestyle, or what we call busking, like on the fly the whole time, and you're missing cues and everything like that. So that was one of my like, and I got paid for that. The church like paid me for that, and I felt real bad about it. So. Yeah. So maybe you've never had an opportunity. Maybe you've never had a fail like that. Yeah. But I don't know.
Well, yeah. At the just so you know, I'm assuming you would have figured as a production guy, but I did have to busk the June event. Our June Exalt.
Really?
Yeah, I busked the whole thing. I had a launch pad, and this is the best way to busk a show. From my experience, is a launch pad as well as something like that. I don't know if they can see it.
Yeah.
But
So it's like
faders, buttons. So you got 64 buttons, and then you got an extra whatever 16, and then you got 8 faders. That's the way to do it. I've seen you can change speed and whatever. And so I just set up busking cues so that there was like a color cue and certain cues and whatever.
Nice.
But still takes forever to program. But yeah. Anyways, so time that I bombed, I think the closest so far would have been, like, obviously there's 500,000 issues every single show. But would have been second Exalt in January. I think we estimated around like 300 people or something. So it was a pretty big crowd. And were you there? Did you?
Yeah, I was at the second Exalt.
Yeah.
Yep.
So my laptop got unplugged and it died halfway through, and I wasn't doing the lights.
Yeah,
so
it was just auto, right?
It wasn't auto. I had a guy, Xavier, he was just like doing cues or whatever. So it was just one song. There wasn't anything crazy. And the laptop died. And so DMX failed, and all of my lights weren't set to blackout. So one of the nerdy techie things is that there's options on pretty much every professional moving head light where when it blacks out, it'll either go to blackout, like when it loses signal from the computer, it'll either just turn off, and that's what you want, or it'll start going crazy and it'll go into its automatic mode.
It's show mode.
It's show mode or whatever. So I didn't have it on blackout because the computer wasn't gonna die, and then the computer died, and it was in the middle of, I don't know what song. It was a very slow song, and Joel still makes fun of me for this because he had to start building because all the lights started strobing, and he had to start building back up.
I do remember that.
You remember that?
I honestly thought that may have been planned.
I know, that's what people said, because Joel saved me, and he started building it back up. But it was in a time where it was like just voices and chill instruments, and it was such a gentle time, and then it just started like everywhere, and then we built it back up, got it plugged back in. But anyways, that was probably the closest I've had to a big bomb.
And I don't say that to embarrass you, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want you to share that to like feel embarrassed, but to just tell the people like listening to that, like, we still, like, production people will still make mistakes.
Oh yeah.
Like, and kind of saying this as like a PSA to like people watching, like, the sound person knows when there's a problem. The lighting person knows when there's a problem. Like, of course we appreciate when you come and like tell us something, but like, we know already.
Yeah, when you say that, all the lights were strobing for 3 minutes. It's like I was aware.
Like we were sprinting around the building trying to fix that. Okay, like, and so I say that kind of jokingly, but very serious. That like the heart and work that like and drive and passion that like people put into like these things is the same work that like professional athletes put in. Maybe not physically the same amount of work, but like the amount of attention and detail that goes into these things is immense. And it is a gift from God. Production and serving in this way is a gift from God. Much like being able to greet, or much like being able to play in a worship band, being able to program and understand technology and these things is a gift from God. That is a wisdom that God has placed in your life to then serve him with. And I have heard this in my time that, oh, that's not real ministry. Excuse me? Like, so David playing the lute and singing isn't real ministry either then? Right? Like that. And I never said that. I just kind of swallowed it and was like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yeah.
I wanted to fight back, but I didn't because it's the wrong time and place. But I just want like the audience to understand too that like production is a ministry. You are helping usher people into a space where they meet God. And I think that is really, really impactful and important. You know, and it's not to say that you need that kind of stuff, because you don't. But it makes it a whole lot more engaging and friendly, or not friendly, but like new person focused and all that kind of stuff. So sound and lighting and video and all those things is a ministry in and of itself, because you are ultimately the vessel in which, not ultimately, but you are a medium in which the gospel is being shared. And I think that that's really important. And I just want to like put that out there, because I think you would agree with me on that.
Well, yeah, like one thing we're blessed with at Exalt is an incredible music team. Our music team, love them so much. They're amazing, and God has blessed them to be able to lead worship in the way that they do. And so one thing that I think I could compare the lights to is, this music team that nobody seemed to have a problem with them being really good at, Jaden being really good at guitar and Cade being really good at keyboards, and striving to be better and better. And I think that's the exact same thing as not wanting more lights, but wanting the lights to accent what they're doing better and what God's doing through them better. And like the speakers are one thing that I think even I underappreciate. Like, man, one thing I'll share just so people can, I want to bring light to the crew that set up the June event and tore down the June event.
Yeah.
There was 2 of us there from Jamie Freeman from MDAC. Oh, carried
Love you, Jamie.
that.
I want you on the podcast.
Yes. Him and I got there at 4:30 a.m. We started setting up. The rest of the team showed up between 5 and 6 a.m. About 8 of us from 6 a.m. till 10:30 setting up. 6 a.m. till 10:30, so starting at 4:30, of just putting things up, putting speakers up, setting up soundboards, setting up live stream, setting up cameras, running cables, hundreds of cables. Like, that team killed it. And then to stay and tear down at 2 a.m. is crazy all throughout the day. So anyways, wanted to bring light to MDAC's crew because MDAC, beautiful.
Yep.
And then same thing with the Bethel crew at the next Exalt. Anyways, what I was saying, I just had to shout you guys out.
It's okay.
What was I saying?
You were giving honor to the team and then talking about you just mentioned the team.
Right, yeah, because the Exalt music crew is amazing. And then our tech crew, we want them to be amazing too. And like, we just want to glorify God with everything that we have.
Yeah.
Which is good speakers, which is good lights, which is good music, which is, good prayer warriors. Like, we're worshiping in every way we can.
And that's biblical. Mm-hmm. When they rebuilt the temple and they rebuilt the ark, they got the finest craftsmen across the world, the world they knew at the time anyway, to come and build it because they knew that God deserved the absolute best. Right. They had the finest artisans in gold and carpet and drapes and like everything, right? Like everything was, I'm not going to use the word perfect because perfection died, with Jesus, but they had people that had the utmost quality in their ability. And that is an honor and a worship to God, right? And so much in the same way, people who built this very church, right? Like in the rafters right now above us, there are people who prayed over every truss and have scriptures written on them and signed everything because they knew that it was they gave everything they could to make sure and raise this place in the honor and glory of God. Like that's is an act of worship, much like the unforeseen people who go into making every single live stream happen that happens at Bethel. I have a team of 4 or 5 people every single Sunday who nobody will ever see besides maybe the camera person, but it's like they worship with everything they have every single Sunday, right? Or Jamie or you or your whole team, hiding every cable in sight to make sure that like that is a form of excellence and a form of worship to God that I don't think gets enough recognition, truthfully. And I think it's changing. But just huge shout outs to all of the people who work like behind the scenes in that like as well, because there's a lot that goes into it. And I know that they work behind the scenes because they don't want the praise. Like they, but it's good to honor that in that way. And so I think one of the things that I actually think is really powerful about the church and production is this idea that like production in churches, whether it's like video cameras, sound, lighting, all this stuff, has created amazing opportunities for the next generation to hone and craft skills that they might not otherwise be able to get. Right? Like I probably would never be in this field if it wasn't for Calvary Temple Brandon, Scott Beswitherick, and Tyler Lane. Shout outs to them. Without them, I would not have any idea of where I started in this, right? But Scott was the sound guy at youth, and I just saw him clicking buttons one day and was like, that looks really cool. And he slowly started showing me things. And then Tyler taught me how to do the computer. And and all these like little things. And it was like I got to serve in an area at church that it was completely unbeknownst to me before. And because of them, they sparked a passion in me that has now led me into this field of doing this podcast and doing a live stream and videos and all these other things that, you know, have reached thousands of people. And that's not a brag. That's just over my 3 years of Bethel, I've gotten tens of thousands of views on videos. And it's like, that's tens of thousands of people that have now heard about God that maybe didn't before. And I can't say that for certain. That's just total views. But you get the point that I'm saying. Right. And so like, or it's like singing, right? Like Katy Perry started singing in church. So Adele started singing in church. Like so many of these people have honed their craft in church. And I think that that is something that is so unique and special, like about the church production world. And I don't know if I think Exalt is like that as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have built a platform literally yourself to then to hone and build your craft, but you're bringing other people alongside. And I think that that's really awesome.
Yeah, the people at Trident made a joke about that. They were like, "Man, Carter, you couldn't find an event to do lighting for in Brandon," and because like I told them I only wanted to do church stuff, and I only wanted to do, like, I got an offer for a concert for Buck Cherry or whatever to set up, not to LD.
Still,
and I was just like, I don't like the music, like it's not God honoring, and I don't know, it just convicted me not to be so holy or whatever, but. It was just kind of a funny joke that was like, yeah, if you don't have anything to do lights for, start something.
Well, and shout outs to your boss, like shout outs to Trident for honoring that though, right? Like I know some companies would not do that. So like that's, you know, I've worked with Trident a little bit in the past. Tyler, again, we mentioned him. He's really good friends with Ronnie. So when I was at Calvary Temple, Tyler just used to bring me video equipment all the time because he like helped Ronnie start it. So he just he just brought me a gimbal one time. He brought me a slider, all these different things. And I was like, ooh, this is cool to play with and stuff. But and that again, that was one of those moments where I was like, I was filming for the live stream and I was like, I can play around and do cool stuff. But
exactly.
Anyway, I was going to say, like, I just think that that's something really unique about the way we use church, like church and production world can come together is like, I know there's a good generation of people who started because of church. And I know somebody who is like runs the biggest concert house in Saskatoon or the second biggest concert house. He's one of my closest friends and my mentor, good Christian guy. He literally started his career in church. Like he just was a sound guy one time and he slowly like just learned and grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And now he runs one of the biggest concert houses in Saskatoon or in Saskatchewan. And it's like, they don't always have Christian acts come through, but he's a Christian guy who runs that. And it's amazing to see. And to think that he got his start in the church and now he's like managing tour shows and all these different things for like, So I just say I bring some light to that, you know, as well. There's an amazing opportunity for people to get involved. And that's going to be kind of my last question because I don't want to take up too much more of your time. What is your pitch to get people involved in production or just in ministry and volunteering and just getting involved in their church as well? Because I think obviously we're talking specifically about production because that's what you and I are passionate about. But I know that you're just passionate about getting the next generation involved in any form. So what's your pitch to them?
Yeah, this was the last question I thought about because I was like, I have no idea. And I was thinking about it on the ride here. I was like, I have no idea what I would say to get people involved. But what really got me involved was when my pastor, Kevin Ratz, left from the Gate. So that was a long time ago before he left off to Alberta. And he was leaving off to Alberta and he was taking his whole family with him who had done all of our camera stuff. We didn't have big productions, like a church of 40 people. And he was like, Carter, you know what? You're young. You know how computers work. Can you please help us? And I was like, oh, I'm really busy. He's like, okay. I get that. I understand that. And I made up a ton of excuses why I wouldn't be able to do it. I made up a ton of excuses why I was too busy, why I had this going on and this going on. And the question he asked me, which might sting for some people and be like, oh, did he really ask you that? It was, Carter, I completely respect and honor that. I'm not going to get you to respond to this question, but how much do you love Jesus and do you want to serve him? And he said, I am not guilting you with that. I promise you, if you don't want to, don't do it. I totally get it. But think about where you're serving him and all the things you just listed. And if it's not at our church, don't do that. But if you want to serve him, serve him. I was like, oh, Kevin. And I was like, okay, bye. and then I thought about it and I was like, man, that's a good question. And so I think it's something we can all really think about is, where are you serving God in your day-to-day life? It doesn't have to be at your church. Where are you serving God? And if you're not serving God, which I wasn't at all, I was serving myself over and over and over again, I would say find a place to serve him. And if you can't find one, give something else up to find a place to serve him. That doesn't have to be in your church, but if you're gifted in production, like, God can work through what you love and he can make it an enjoyable experience to do production and serve him at the same time, or to sing on your worship team and serve him at the same time. Like, he doesn't always want it to just be this burden of having to give something up in order to serve him. You can pursue something, like we said, through serving him. So that would be what I would say, is find something that you're passionate about and serve God with it. And if you can't, then serve God anyways.
That's really well said. Yeah, that's a very pastor level answer.
Yeah.
Like, and knowing Pastor Kevin for the little bit that I did, I can absolutely hear him like saying it and stuff.
In such a kind way. Like, it was not a do this for me way. It was just like, I want to help you express your love for Jesus.
It was the kick in the pants you needed too, right? Like, I've had somebody do that to me. I had same mentor that I was talking about before. He definitely had to call me out on that once and was like, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you, like, how are you serving God in this? And I was like, whoa, it's a good question.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say, like, to wrap this all up, like, first of all, thank you for coming on and sharing your heart in that. And an audience, if you guys listening, watching, I know there's a little bit of some technical stuff in this episode and whatnot, but I think the heart really comes across that at least myself here at Bethel and Carter with Exalt and just the ministries that we also support, we don't do it to be flashy. We don't, like the whole question of like, why does production matter to churches? It matters because it ultimately is a form of honoring God, right? Like, much like good singing honors God, good sound, good lights, good video is another form of honoring God. And we didn't talk about this, and I'm going to quickly end with it. When production is bad. You almost never know when it's good.
Yeah. Right? I was thinking that. Yeah.
So just for people listening, keep that in mind. When was the last time you thanked your sound person or thanked the worship leader? A lot of the time we only get feedback, but we don't get a compliment. And I'm not saying I'm not fishing for compliments. I'm just saying that everybody always knows when things go bad, but when production goes right, you never know it. So, and that's ultimately our goal, is to never know that we were there, right? To be heard, not seen. So keep that in mind. That is the heart behind it. We're there to honor and glorify God and use our gifts and talents and abilities that God has given us to make it so that you can come and have a distraction-free, worshipful moment with God. And I think that's why it matters to churches. And realistically, we'll have you on and we'll do a part 2 of this, because then we can get into the whole content creation side of all of this kind of stuff. But I think that's the heart behind it. And I know that that's my heart behind it. And I think that that's probably something you would radiate and reflect, as well. Where can they find you? How can they keep up to date with Exalt or anything that you want to plug for them? Yeah.
I don't really post anything production on my Instagram or at all, but Exalt is Brandon_Exalt, I think, is just our Instagram.
I think it is.
Yeah. So go check that out. And if you're interested, come to one of our events. They're really fun and a great experience with God. Do you have another date to announce at all yet for something in Brandon? We do have our date picked and location. I should have gotten permission before this to share that, so I'm not going to say it. Don't say it. But it's coming up. I want to know after. You'll tell me out. You can tell me after the camera. I'll tell you after the camera. Nice. Okay. Thank you for coming on again. I really appreciate it. We will definitely do a part 2 to this. Thank you for giving listeners for watching, listening. Make sure, honestly, guys, the best way you want to help support this is actually tell somebody, right? It sounds so cringy and content creator focused to be make sure you share it around, but genuinely, podcasts live or die by word of mouth. So if you enjoyed this episode, or somebody in another church or you're in community that would appreciate this,
share it. That's honestly all that I have. You don't have to like it or anything like that. Like, I just want more people to listen to the show. So yeah, please do that.
Totally.
All right. Thank you all for watching, listening. We got some good special guests coming up. So keep that in mind. Got some good people lined up. Just got to make sure we get all the dates right and everything.
Let's go.
But yeah, thank you all for watching. We'll see you guys later. God bless.
Peace.